Well, good evening and welcome to this evening's webinar, Back to School with the TI-84 Plus Family, Part 2, hosted by Texas Instruments Australia. Part 1's webinar last night was very informative. I'm looking to Part 2 tonight with Jim and John again. My name is Rodney Anderson and I will be your host for the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, will be available at a later date via on-demand along with the panelist documents that we're wishing to share with you. If you have any questions or like to chat during the webinar, move your cursor to the top of the screen and then a drop box will open up for you and you'll be able to find the chat window. And if you'd like to ask a question or have a chat, please direct them to all panelists and we'll look at them through the evening and direct it to the presenters. At the conclusion of the webinar, its feedback is very important to Texas Instruments Australia, so take the time to complete the survey and it will improve the webinar series. After the webinar, email will be delivered to you within 48 hours and also you'll get an email with the link for the webinar certificate. Tonight's panellist is John Beaumont from O'Loughlin Catholic College. He loves his technology and presents at conferences around Australia and TCube International.
Good evening.
And Jim is our first presenter for the night, and he's at QUT, and he's very passionate about Texas Instruments and loves technology, and as you see there, started the data logging experience at Dreamworld in Queensland. So evening, Jim.
G'day, Rodney. G'day, everybody.
So, Jim, you're first tonight, so let's look forward to it.
And we've gone there, and
there's your screen.
Jim.
Okay, let's see what we've got here and make sure you're seeing mine. You should have a TI-84 Plus CE with a blank screen happening there.
Yes, we do.
That's fine. Okay, so we'll leave that there for a second, and I'll just reiterate what Rodney said in the introduction, that we encourage you to use the chat screen or the Q&A window to forward your questions to the panellists, and we'll endeavour to have somebody answer them during the evening. These two webinars are really intended for beginners with the TI-84, or in some cases it might be like people like myself that are coming back to the TI-84 after a period of using other technology, or it might be teachers that have recently changed schools and had to find that this school is now using 84s. So for whatever reason, it is intended as a beginners in going through some fundamentals of the 84. So for that reason, if you don't understand something or don't get your questions answered, then pop it on the chat window so that we can address those. For those of you that were here on part 1, John started off by talking last night about how to find out about the operating system of your calculators and how to upgrade, or talked about the need to get all the students on the same page with the same operating system. Just very, very quickly, I'll refresh your memory. So second function and memory down here, and just click on about and it will tell you about your calculator, and you'll see up here the current operating system. Now that's my emulator here. What about when you are working with kids in the classroom? Well, I'm going to swap over here to the TI Connect software, and at the moment I don't have one connected, but I'm going to plug one in and let you see what happens. And see what happens there, and you'll notice that I have a TI-84 Plus pop up there, and it's got operating system 5.0, and the current operating system for that is 5.1 something or other. So that one would need to be upgraded. And so one way of doing that You can see there if I click on Actions, send operating system to calculators. And if I do that, send operating system to calculators, it will ask me to find an operating system. Now, the operating systems, that was included in the part 1 of this webinar, and I swear I put an operating system in there tonight. The best laid plans of mice and men. It's intriguing. There we go. So we've got an operating system there, and we could open that and it will prompt me as to do I want to connect to all connected calculators or just selected calculators, and clicking send would do that. Okay, I'm not going to do that right at this moment because you don't wish to spend time on a webinar watching little things go round and round on the screen while an operating system is transferred, but you get the idea of how to do that. When you are doing this with students, they don't need to go through this procedure with you with a computer and TI Connect, as long as you have one student or even your own handheld calculator with the correct or the most recent operating system on there, then you can transfer operating systems direct from calculator to calculator. And that becomes a little bit problematic to demonstrate using the emulator, because if I go back to the emulator, I can only be one calculator. And so if I went to the calculator or my version of it here, you'll notice there's a button here called Link, and so second function there, Link, and second function, Link. What's going on there? Let's just clear everything. Somebody tell me what's happening there.
Yep, that's right, Jim. It just won't show anything because
won't show anything.
The emulator won't show anything.
Okay. So righto.
Yeah. The handheld will see that.
Yeah. So what should have come up, depending on whether you're on an 84 Plus or the 84 CE, it looks the same except for the style of the graphics because of the different resolution. So you've got the option to send, and on both of them you've got a menu option to send the operating system. Now you need the two calculators connected via the short USB cable, and the key thing about this is that the calculator that you're sending the operating system to must be ready and waiting to receive the operating system. So you would go to that second function, Link, and move across to Receive. You've got Receive there. If you're on the calculator, hit Enter, and that will just start, that will say waiting until you send it from the calculator with the correct operating system. And it's important that, I think essential actually, that you have to have that calculator ready and waiting to receive before you start to send. So that's two options, calculator to calculator and from the TI Connect. And while we've got these two images on the screen, it's worthwhile noting that you can send anything between calculators, and likewise send it also from your TI Connect to any calculators that you have connected via USB to your computer. So we'll talk about a few of those things during the night, but one of the key ones is to be able to group some data and send it between one calculator and the other. Okay, let's go back from that and go back to TI Connect to look at a few other things. TI Connect gives you a few useful things to be able to do. probably not going to talk about all of the features tonight, but highlight a few key ones. You'll notice here it says Calculator Explorer. So if I do that, I can see essentially the memory of the calculator, and I can see some things in there that I could use or send to. I can see the lists, for example, and I can highlight the lists and send it out or capture it to my computer and then forward it on to others. The usual procedures work. If I want to get a bit selective, then I can press Control and select a few lists, or if I use the Shift key, then I can do a whole selection of things there, and I've picked up a Y equation, so Control key and click on that turns that one off. So all the things you're familiar with selecting from a Windows directory will work there, and then you go up to the actions and you can see what you can do with it. So I can send it to a computer, and if I had calculators, multiple calculators connected, I could send it to calculators. But there's one really useful feature that I wanted to talk about tonight, and that is to import data from CSV or comma delimited text files into the lists or matrices on your calculator. And so that's really useful, especially in this day and age where there's lots of data out there, and I just want to give you one example of doing that. This could be data that you created yourself, say in an Excel spreadsheet, save it as a CSV file, and you can transfer it to your TI-84. But I thought I'd just show you one cool place to go that I found recently, and that's this site here called Climate at a Glance. And this was an activity that we came up with at the end of last year. There was some people we were working with, and it was around the time of the Paris climate talks, and they said, well, what can we do in class with students now? So we just went searching for climate change data, and we found this site that's very, very useful. It's based in the US, so you get lots of US data, but it also does acknowledge that the rest of the world exists. So if we go to the global ones, we can get all sorts of temperatures. Now, annual temperature is more than enough. We see we've got 1880 through to 2015. We can go global or pick our local area. Let's just go for land temperatures, and we will get that. Now, the point of this exercise tonight is not to go into this, but just to point out that it gives me a graph of the variations in temperature from an average that it talks about in there, and it's there in a table. So I could cut and paste that into Excel and save it as a CSV, but this one delightfully has a little button there that says download in CSV format. And so if you do that, you've got something that will come across straight into your TI-84. There's just one little proviso there. When you download the file, let me show you the file, it'll come up on the web page. You've got some extra information up the top, and so you just need to go in. Anytime you've got a file, you need to get rid of all that stuff at the top. The file needs to be just pure data, no other extraneous information, no column headings, nothing like that. So having done that, let me get back to this thing here and get up here and talk about import data from the CSV. And so you can see that I've got a few different bits of data there and so on. So if I click on that, and you'll notice that the file type is Excel CSV, open that, and it'll pop up with a window. There are two columns in that data, so I'm going to copy two lists and then say continue, and it's going to select and transfer that data to the calculators that I've got connected. So replace anything that happens to be in there and send, and it should be happening. And I bet you it's not, because what's happened there? Reconnect and try to transfer. Okay, that's because my calculator's gone to sleep somewhere sitting around here. But trust me, the thing works, because I've already done it. I've got the data in here. Sorry?
As you're doing that, sometimes students need to be aware just to make sure they push the USB straight into the calculator properly. I've done it in the past, as we all have as teachers, and they say, well, is it working? And the first thing we check is, the USB is connected up, isn't it, to make sure it's correctly into the calculator. Push right in.
Yeah, and I'll just swap it across, because import data, let's take that climate data 5-year, open, 2 columns, and we will continue, and selected calculators, and we've got that one selected, send, and did it happen? Well, how could I tell? If I was in a class, I could go there and see what is in there, and you'll notice that list 1 and list 2 are quite large. They were all empty lists. Now there's 254 bytes in each one there, so the data's gone across, and I could then work on that in the calculator, or, as we said, exchange it with students. And I think I had it set up. No, I bet you I cleared it. I bet you I cleared it. But I sent it across before, and one of the things I'll mention quickly here, just to get this data in and show you that it's there, is that because I wanted to do other things, I saved the 2 lists into a group, and so I can go second function, memory, and go to groups and ungroup, and there's my climate data that I saved, and click on that, and I will overwrite everything in there, because that's the way I do it. And so now if I go to stats and edit, there's my climate data from 1880 through to 2015, and I'm not sure if I had the stat plot set up correctly for this. It didn't do it. Okay, so I need to do a little bit of editing on that, and I'm going to hand over to John at this point, because I was going to use this data for the latter part of the webinar, so I will clean it up while John's talking to you, and be right for the next time.
Yes, Jim, that's very powerful, isn't it? Saving a lot of time in class. The students can actually save time by transferring data from the Excel documents to the calculator and computer.
And I mean, it makes it really easy that anywhere on the web you can gather data now, or generate your own data. You can get it into, as I said, Excel, CSV file, and then transfer it straight across, and you got it in your calculator ready for the kids to analyse individually.
So, John.
Thank you, Rodney. That's fantastic, Jim. Like I said, I find that using that TI Connect, and not only for the operating system, but that transfer of data is really rich. So thanks for showing us that. We had a couple of questions, Jim, when you were talking. One was, where do we get the operating system from? So I thought I just would show that a second. So this is the Texas Instrument homepage. Notice the site is Australia and New Zealand. We go to downloads, and there's the software. This is all free for you, for teachers and students to actually download. If you wanted the 84 Plus and the silver, it's there, and the Plus CE is down here. I'm just going to click here for now, and there's the operating system. We can open up the apps as well, so I could go all, leave it on that for now, and we can see there's the operating system that you can download onto your desktop and then access it whenever you want to. The other thing that somebody asked was the TI Connect. That's also available for free. So if you go into computer software, we'll find all those again. Then there is the Smart View. Oh, have I? Oh, it's still trying to load it. There it is. TI Connect is down here, and we can bring those across. TI Connect CE is the new one that Jim's using. Much quicker and cleaner one, and like I said, now you can link more than one character. That works really nicely. So those are all available for free for people to download. So continuing from where Jim left off, and there's my
sorry, John, can I just butt in?
Yes,
just to, before we leave that, just to point out to people, I just solved the problem. It had nothing to do with the transfer of the data. I'd been playing on my emulator and had changed the plot settings so that it was trying to plot lists that weren't there. And if I'd had it set properly to list 1 and 2, we would have been functioning correctly. So totally my fault, not the software's fault.
There we go. There you go. Solved. You can also see, and this is something that I was working on earlier. Let me just get rid of those ones here. But we can also get screens. So I've got 2 calculators connected, you can see at the moment. Let me just widen that so you can see what they are. All right, I've got a TI-84 Plus Silver Edition and a CE. And I can actually take photos of those screens that I've actually got on at the moment. So that's the screen of my CE handheld. Very useful if we were wanting to actually make up some documents to give students or some worksheets, or even to have in tests or exams some questions that actually have the screen from their calculator they want to use, so they feel a bit more that they know what's happening. And also there's my 84C Silver, which is a different screen that I've been doing some work on. That's quite nice. We can then literally just copy those if we wanted to. I'll just copy that. I can copy both of them. I'll just copy the first one, and if I open up a Word document, I can then paste those in and use those accordingly in any document I want. Following on from that and using the emulator, if we had a screen on here, we can also copy that screen using the same camera icon at the top here. We can also just grab it and drag it across like the Inspire, and we can dump that across there as well. So if we had something in our Y equals that we wanted to use, obviously in this situation that's nothing exciting at the moment, but yeah, we can just dump that across and have that over there nicely. So very easy to, like I said, make up assessment items, but also help worksheets for the students. Let me get rid of that. Okay. So what we covered yesterday, there's one other question that somebody asked, was how do we change the brightness of the screen? So Jim was working mostly in the TI-84 Plus CE. I'm just going to go back to the 84 Plus for now. Pretty much everything until we get on to the color options, and the images will be the same for both. But if you do want to change the color, we can see the contrast, and it happens on students' calculators much more than ours. It's just here, and we can see that there's the contrast icon between the up and down arrow. So we press second up to make it darker, and second down, and hold that, not press it, to make it lighter. And probably the only other major key is whatever we're in, if we don't want to be in something, is this good old quit function that will take us back always to the home screen. We talked yesterday as well about some of the quit keys. I'm just going to, again, and Rodney, I'm going to catch you out today, mate. I'm just going to change the view so that we can see the keyboard above, because I wanted to show these keys above. I'm just going to change the color of the screen here. Sorry, the faceplate.
I haven't taken my eye off the screen tonight. Missed it for 5 seconds, and I missed it, didn't I?
You did. So we've got these quick keys on the functions when the new operating system that we can have now. So this is running, as Jim said, memory about the 2.55 maths print. So there's the quit. So on the function keys, we have these quick keys up here as well now that we can access. So we talked about fractions yesterday, and we talked about some of these with different logs, but I just wanted to show these two. These are two of my favorite ones, both just in normal calculator screen here. So let me show this one here. So we've got a nice little template that we can now work with, which will then give us some nice calculations much easier. So I'm just typing in anything random that comes up to my head. And Rodney, got the answer to that? Well done, you were right. 34. We can do it in that screen, but also we can use the derivatives in the graphing screen as well. So I'll just go to the graphing screen for a second. That's what I'm going to use in a minute. Probably not the most exciting. So let me come to the end of that. Second insert, put a squared there. And we can see, oops, window range. So let's go zoom standard. There's my quadratic. If we're using the CE, this is what I set up to show people that things were hidden down the bottom. Let's get rid of that. Clear. They'll be nicely in colour. I'm going to stick with the 84 plus for old time's sake. And we can also then go into y equals. Using the quick keys again, we can go alpha F2. We're going to do the derivative this time. And with respect to x. And we're actually going to do the derivative of this equation. So I could type it in again. But what did we say yesterday, Rodney? Not lazy, it was time efficient.
Time efficient.
Thank you very much. There you go, F4. There's y1. Just going to click on that. And rather than get a definite, rather than get a derivative at this particular point, we want it for all points. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now, when I go to graph, it will graph me nicely the derivative of the function as well. So a really nice function option to use, and especially on the color, it comes up really nicely indeed. Now, some other things on the home screen while we're here that I think are a really nice little option is this test option. I think this is underutilized. I mean, Carol Newells did a fantastic webinar last year using these test functions, but I just want to show you quite a nice little simple one that we could use with PowerSet if we were wanting to discuss with students if, say, two indices when they are multiplied together, what they actually give us. So yes, we could do it like that and get the answer, but what about if I go off and copy it, what about if we say, is it the same as, is it equal to, what would the student say? Let's go, they probably wouldn't on this one, but let's say they say this, and we'll see that it gives us a 0. So in the test mode, it will just give us a 0 for false and a 1 for true, which again is quite a nice programming language to get the students thinking about as well. So the students can go back and go, okay, well that doesn't look that good. We'll go up here. Let me delete those. Oh yeah, of course, that's why I'm supposed to add them. And if we do that now, it changes to a 1. So that is true. It's a nice little opportunity to use something in there under test. Another thing on the 84, we don't know what mode we're in, either degrees or radians. We can actually find out by pressing mode, and we can see that it's set at the start in radians. We can change degrees. On the CE, it tells us nicely at the top, it's there in our face, telling us what's going on. So I'll now stay on this one. Works exactly the same. Sorry to keep on about this, but it works exactly the same on the TI-84 Plus. But if we were wanting to get some answers, and especially things about students who are doing courses where they may have to be in radians at times and degrees at other times, obviously since we're in radians at the moment, and it's clear on the CE for students, but let's just carry on anyway. I'm just going to do, because I'm going to get the fraction key, just so I can show that off, 2 pi, and in a sad way, I quite like the way that pi comes up on the CE. It's a bit more clean, and we can see that we get the answer there, which we know is correct. We also know that if we did that of cos of 60, that it, sorry, not 60, cos of 120, that it wouldn't work, and we wouldn't get the same answer. And obviously, that's because it's using that in degrees. Now, students could change that.
What you're there, John, if you go back to that previous screen, just as a reminder of the top row, as we mentioned last night about seeing the settings there, as you mentioned before, it's really good to really remind students and ourselves as teachers because we can see that, can't we? So it's a really good point that you're making there.
Yeah, and I think what also I've started to encourage my students to do so that they even don't get caught up with this, and especially, both these calculators can work in the same classroom. We can transfer data between both the CE and the 84, so you can have a mixed classroom of both handhelds. I think that it's very easy for it to be missed on the 84, but I think a nice way around it is to say to students, look, don't leave it just as a numerical equation anyway. Actually add what the units are. So to get the units, they're in here. There's degrees, there's the radians. So I'm just going to press number 3. Now, obviously, in this situation, the answer won't change because it's working in radians and it's saying it's radians. So that's all good. But I think the nice feature of this, Rodney, is that, one, it gets them to think about what the units is in, but also that then doesn't, I would like them to think that they would then, when they are using degrees, to use the degree symbol, and that then works out nicely. We don't actually have to change the mode.
I totally agree. I like doing that in the class as well. While I've got you, we're talking to each other. A question's been asked about inserting images into the graphs page. I know you're going to do it later. I wasn't too sure if you want to do it now or later. So how to grab a photograph.
Yep, I'm actually going to, how are we doing for time? Why don't I move on to that, and I'll save these couple of things that I've got highlighted here, and I can always come back to those.
Yeah.
So,
a question that's been popped up on the screen.
Let's do that right now. Why not? So obviously on the TI-84 Plus, we can't do what I'm about to show you with the images because it's an older calculator, really, that doesn't have the high resolutions, the pixels, and the color to allow this to happen. So I am going to stay on the CE for now. And one of the attached documents does give you a comparison between the two handhelds and what extra is offered on the CE. But we can see, let me just clear that if we go into Format, there's a few extra things in this Format icon that we don't get. But just go back to the 84 and go to the same place that we don't get in the 84. We can have the grids behind on, we can have the axes on, but that's pretty much it. Not much happening here. But in the CE, we now all of a sudden have lots more happening. We can have a dotted grid on the graph. We can have straight lines. We can change the grid colors. Axes we can change if black doesn't suit us with an image behind, and we can change the border if we really want to. But mainly it's the background, and you can see that pre-installed. I'm going to scroll up a little bit quicker. Pre-installed onto the handhelds are some images that we can actually use. And probably my favorite one is this one. For now, that's already a pre-installed image. And if we press that, at the moment, nothing changes. But when I go to graph now, let me just go back, sorry. I'll just, like a magician here. In graph at the moment is just a normal graph that we'd normally see. Let me go to Format, and let's change that to this image here. Nothing changes here, but when we go to graph now, we now have this image behind. So it really allows us to use either photos off the internet or even images that the students get for themselves. I've done it before with my students where they've collected their own images around the school that they've used for mathematical calculations, and they've been able to put them onto their calculator. And in assignments, it's really powerful because they take much more ownership over those. Like I said, we could, if we didn't like that background, just showing you the advantage of the color, we can change the background. Sorry, the axes. Where's my red? I think I've gone the wrong way for that one. Come back. There we go. We can change that. Now, again, we can't drag the image because it's sort of set, but we can actually move the axes, and this is quite a nice idea to get the students thinking, okay, how am I going to move the axes? Well, I want to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to buy this water spout, so 5 to the left, and I probably want to move it 1 up. So if we go into window, we want to reduce the min. So we could just type it in, but how about I just go to the end and go take away 5, and at the end of this one, take 5. everything else will stay the same, and we wanted to move it up 1, so we're going to add 1. And I find this really useful with my students for them to actually think about how this works and adjusting the axes accordingly. And, you let me fall for that one, didn't you, Rodney, hey?
I was looking going, I won't say anything for the moment because I'm definitely watching, but you
There
did
we
it
go.
on purpose.
So you did that, didn't you? Plus 10. There you go.
10, yeah.
I was there talking and thinking at the same time, and I thought, I'll get this, and obviously, let's go there, over there. Take 2. Take 2.
But it's a good thing in class that happens in the classroom situation. We can discuss it and remind ourselves.
And there we go. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to actually show what we can actually do with this now. But Rodney's question was, what about our own images? So I will show you that. And we can either put it onto a handheld via the TI Connect. But let's say we actually want to put it onto SmartView. So Rodney, was the question about SmartView?
Or just actually putting the image back in what you're doing just there. So
yep.
Someone's found an
very
image
simple.
online.
Really simple. For the emulator into this here, we actually click on the Emulator Explorer button, which is just taking it. And that, at the moment, you can see, a bit like what Jim was showing earlier with TI Connect, this is actually what's already on the emulator. So there's 5 pre-installed images that are already there, and we can see that my lists, I've got nothing in them at the moment. So all I've done is just download an image, and I thought since it was Shrove Tuesday yesterday, I thought I'd get a pancake. So I've just literally saved that as a straight off a Google search, and all I need to do is just grab that and dump it onto my Explorer. And it'll ask me, do you want to replace existing content? Yeah, I don't really want to replace image 1, so I'm actually going to put it down, and I'll just put it as image 7, and it will now send it across. There we go. And we will see, always works fast when you want to. There you go, image 7 is now on my SmartView, and it works exactly the same with the TI Connect. We just go to Calculator Explorer, and we just drag and drop exactly the same, and it will put it onto my handheld. So let's just go back to here now, and go back to my emulator. We can see that it's still got the other one on here, but if I now go back into Format, and Images, I can go across. Infinity, there's my pancakes. Did I look at those, Rodney? I thought you'd appreciate those ones.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you. And press Enter now, and now there's my pancakes on my screen. So really simple. Simply a drag and drop either to TI Connect or to the TI SmartView. Now, a really nice feature that I like now that we're in this and we're looking at the images is only on the CE, is in Stats, rather than going into our list that Jim showed us earlier, is across to Calculate, and rather than scrolling down to the bottom, let's get to the bottom by the top. That makes sense. Now, is this one here called Quick Plot and Fit. Now that allows us to drop some points. So I'm just going to choose that. Drop some points on this image. So if this is my image, and I don't know, let me say I wanted to see if I could fit a quadratic to that top layer of pancakes. And believe it or not, it's much quicker doing this on the handheld than it is on the emulator for some reason. I'm just going to drop a point there. Come across. I'll drop another point there. And this is another one that I've used quite a bit with my students. I told you I was going to get carried away. And to talk to them about, well, how many points should we drop? And get students to perhaps have the same image, the same axes perhaps on it as well. Just go zoom standard and talk about, well, if students just choose, is 2 enough for a quadratic? Is 3? What if students have chosen 6? Do they get anything more accurate? So I'm just going to choose 4 for now. That should give us it. And do we see that it's a bit confusing here when we have the screen to the side? So I'm just going to drop the screen back up above again. I know it makes it a little bit smaller, but you'll see what I'm trying to show you in a second. Is that now this is above the F5 key. So if I press the F5 key, then it will allow me to choose. So I'm now going to go back to the other screen so we can see it a bit bigger. Across. It will now allow me to choose which type of regression I want it to fit to. So I want it to be a quadratic regression. That's number 3. And there goes my quadratic. That's not bad at all. Not bad at all for the bottom of that pancake. Now, do I want to store it? Yes, I do want to store that information. So again, go to F5. Now, I want the X values that from those points I plotted in my X list in list 1, that's fine. The Y values in list 2, that's great. And it will also not only store it as a plot, so in stat plot, but it will also store the regression equation. So I'm happy with all those, as I'm not running with anything else at the moment. And there we have it. And now if we go into Y equals, that regression equation is now in there, as we can see, as a quadratic. The stat plot is on with list 1 and list 2. And we can see all our values in the table here that match nicely to this graph. What do you think about that, Rodney? You happy with that?
Very happy with that.
Yeah?
It's a lovely photo.
Probably the only other thing for now, while we're in this, is if there was some information that you did want to keep, but you didn't want to use it, you want to sort of perhaps to save it for a later date to use with students, and if you change the window, then we can do that by going into second drawer, and we go across to store. And then we would store either the picture or we can store the graph database. And we can store it as any letter that we want between 0 and 9. That gives us 10 storage options. And then we can bring those back at a later date. So if I just stored that, say, as 3, nothing would happen here. If I cleared everything and then I can then I could go back into it later on and bring it back by doing recall that database. So that's quite a nice thing if you wanted to plan ahead in your lessons so that you could actually have something ready to use and then bring it back when you need to in your classes. And the only other thing while I'm in here is probably in the draw function is this one, again, that's quite easily overlooked, is the tangent, and it'll allow me to draw a tangent. Now, it's trying to draw your tangent because I'm in the normal calculator screen, and silly me, I meant to be in the graph screen here, so I'll do that again. And go to number 5 again. And it'll say, where do you want that tangent to be drawn? Well, I think I want it to be drawn at x equals 7. And there we go, it's drawn me a tangent at x equals 7, and it's given me the equation of that tangent. Now, as I showed you earlier, we could have found that other ways, but there's a nice little opportunity of just doing it into draw. It doesn't store that information, which is just a draw, but it gives students a very quick way of getting a tangent and getting the information they need from that. And I think, Jim, if I have time at the end, I may mention matrices, but apart from that, I think I may pass back over to you, Jim, unless there's any questions, Rodney, from any of our watchers tonight.
No questions at the moment. You've answered that in great depth and great detail regarding the images and all those other features. That's great, what the new operating system has there. So Jim's now going to present the next session. But it's a very powerful feature, as you said there, with the transferring the images from, you could capture the image yourself. It could have been your breakfast there, John, looking at that. Like, I know you're such a great cook. That could have been your
photograph. Thank you very much, Rod. I actually had some pancakes this morning. There's some leftover pancakes and some blackberries I picked from the wild bushes at the front of the pastry here. So I did all right. Anyway, Jim, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Rodney. Yeah, just picking up from where I left off the last time, what you see on the screen now is in fact the 2 lists that I got in there. We managed to ascertain that. But previously, when I tried to go straight to the graph, I didn't realise that I'd been playing around before, and in my stat plot menu, I actually had list 3 and list 4 turned on here, which is why it was giving me an error, because there was absolutely no data whatsoever in list 3 and list 4. So while I've been having a break, I've been fixing this up, and we now have the scale set appropriately for the data, 1880 through to 2020, gives us a little bit of space at the side, an X scale of 25, and because this is measuring variations from the average temperature for the century, it's just on a scale from -1 to 1. And when you have a look at the graph, now we get our stat plot, and you get some evidence there to say that yes, temperatures are fluctuating, but there is some evidence there to say that in recent years, for the last, if this is 25, a scale of 25, for the last 50 years it's been taking off a little bit, and you could have all sorts of discussions with kids how you can analyse that and what you might want to what sort of model you want to fit, and John showed you some options there of how you can fit them. But I just wanted to...
Tim, that's quite amazing. I think that's a really powerful visual for the students. One, the ease of bringing it across from the website, but on that CE, that's really quite, yeah, it has quite a big impact, doesn't it? It's quite amazing, with so many pieces of data in there as well.
Yeah. Sorry?
With so many pieces of data in there as well.
Yeah. And I have another version where I sort of just got every 5 years, just to, for some classes you might actually want to reduce the number of data points, just not to clutter it up so much, but it's so easy to bring it across that you can do that. And that actually, that website lets you get like 5-year running averages and all sorts of things you can download, but I just took it straight across the temperature, for the average temperature for every year. What I wanted to do is mention in a little bit more detail something that I alluded to when I got this data in there. As we said, it's a great set of data. We've sent it out to all the kids, and now the kids are going to go to their science class and go and do some data logging or something like that with their calculators, and all that data's gone. Not necessarily if they know what they're doing. It's quite simple. If we look at our stats, there's the data. As we said before, we saw it's in list 1 and list 2, and so we can go to the memory of our calculator, we can go to groups, and we can create a new group. And I'm just going to call this very quickly CD for climate data, and press enter. Now, what do I want to have in that group? Well, I just want lists, and it's in list 1 and list 2, and I just verify that I've selected list 2, so go across and say that it's done, and those 2 complete lists of data are now in a group called CD. So I can clear my calculator, do all sorts of things, give it to a student to use, have whatever, and just reset the whole lot, and I can get that data back again as I did before by going to the memory function and go to groups again, and this time ungroup, and you can see there's my new group, and I just click on that and I get it back. Now, I won't do that because I've already got that data in there, but what I want to do for this last little segment is select this third group there, which is a little bit cryptic in its name, and I'm going to, because I've already got stuff in list 1 and list 2, I'm going to overwrite everything, so that's in there. So if you have a look at list 1 and list 2 now, it's a little bit different. And that data, I guess it says something about me. If you're at the end of a long overseas flight and you are bored out of your mind and you've seen the 3 movies that you actually like on the plane 5 times over because you can't sleep on a plane, you might choose to do something like this. So we actually got the message that we were descending into Brisbane, and you know how you get the little maps and data. So I started writing down the height of the plane and the outside temperature. So that's what those two columns are there. List 1 is the height in feet, and list 2 is the height, or sorry, the external temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. Now, we can attempt to graph that because plot 1 is still turned on, but of course the ranges that we set was for years, not heights and so on. So I'm going to zoom here and zoom stats to fit that data, and there's an extra little line on there that we won't worry about too much before because again I was playing and I haven't cleared something. But you can see my data there. Now it obviously shows a trend and we can do some regression on that, but you might remember that the units of that data was on feet and degrees Fahrenheit, which is not too meaningful for our students. So I just wanted to show very, very quickly that you can actually enter formulas into these lists. So I'm going to go across to here and I'm going to go down here so that I can enter a formula down in this bottom box, and I want to change the height in feet to a height in metres. Now, if you're the age that I am, that went through all the metric conversion at school and so forth, and you also learned your imperial tables, you still remember that there's 12 inches in a foot, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to get list 1 here and multiply it by 12. So I've changed it from feet to inches, and I'm going to divide by 39.37 because every schoolboy had to learn that there was 39.37 inches in a metre. And so we do that and it will go in there, and now all my heights have been changed to metres. And similarly I can go across here and enter my formula to change degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. So this time, and John mentioned last night, there's the lists down here in blue. So I want list 2. I'm going to subtract the 32, close the brackets, and times 5 divided by 9, and enter, and there it is there. And you can see, now understand why when I had this set up before I was doing my scatter plot of list 3 and list 4. So if I go back to here and I'm going to take plot 1 and go down, whoops, get carried away, and so change this to list 3 and list 4 and graph that. And because the scale has changed, now my line is matching up, so I'm going to do the zoom stat again. And some people might think, well, why do I have to do zoom stat again? It was already in zoom stat, but zoom stat zooms to the current data that you've got plotted on there, and that's changed. So one last little thing here, if I can remember how to do this, it's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to stats, calc, and come down here and go to the bottom of the list. John talked about quick plot and fit, and you can see that I had evidence there of playing around with a manual fit. So let's have a look at that one. And this is giving you the opportunity to do on the calculator a little bit of what you might do, or you might have expected students to do if they were doing this by hand. But of course, if you've got a large data set, the students won't have time to plot all the points, so we can combine the two options here. So I'm going to store this equation in Did you notice that, guys? I didn't do it.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, you pressed F5 rather than F4, Rodney. Jim.
Sorry, because I was trying to be smart and not go up there and do it. Okay. Well, I'll do it again. Let's start and do stat calc. I was too busy talking and getting carried away and making smart comments to you into what exactly what it was doing. So manual fit, and I want to store that in an equation. So alpha, there I go. And now I've got my Y1, and I'll put it into Y1 and go down and calculate. And there's my data set. And now you see it's very similar to the quick plot option, but I've got 1 point here, and so I'm going to just drop that point there. And then, as John said, this works a lot faster on the handheld than it does on the emulator. Woo! And we get something jumping around there. And if I was right over the other side, you'd see what's going on, and shift it up there onto the line. I'm not going to attempt to get right across to the screen, and I can, because I've been impatient, it's getting ahead of myself, so come back down a bit perhaps, but it's going to go on a bit because I've been clicking the mouse madly. So let's just bring it down there somewhere halfway reasonable and hit enter, and it will calculate a line. So you can see that it wasn't really a very good line of best fit, although you could argue that maybe I want 2 lines of best fit because there's slight differences in that data. It's not perfectly linear. So that's a very quick look at the stats, and wanted to finish off very quickly by just mentioning the apps. A lot of the things on this calculator, what have I done there? Oh, I've got to press enter to get rid of that and say that we've finished that. So let's go to apps. Let's quit out of that and come up with apps. I'm still not quitting out of that. Get me out of here, guys. What have I done?
Just press enter, Jim.
Just press enter, Jim, because it's not
press F5.
Enter.
Yeah. I didn't press it enough times. I'm losing the bottom of my screen. Somehow I had got rid of it from last night, but my taskbar's come up again and
Or press
F5. Just press alpha F5.
Alpha F5.
Yeah.
It's done. You just see on the bottom of your right-hand side of your screen.
Actually, I was playing with that today and I realised you can click down there and it works. Okay, so yeah, that was, I'm very conscious of the time for the webinar, so I was rushing through there. So now I'll just very quickly mention the apps. These come standard on your calculator. If they're not installed when you get it, we've already shown you the TI Connect. You can download the apps from the website and transfer them across to your calculator. Some of these are obvious from what their names are. The Finance, Cabri Junior is a dynamic geometry package. Cell Sheet gives you a spreadsheet, conics, inequalities, and so on. It's almost every one of those could be a webinar in its own right to go through and look at what they can do. I'm just going to mention briefly, since we're short of time, probability simulator, and you can see what you've got here. And again, I'm losing this the bottom here. So am I right? I can click here. No, yes, okay, and I can click the second one to toss it, so it will simulate tossing a coin and plot the data, and we can keep on doing this, and once the kids gets a bit tedious, so we can say let's go to F3 and we'll toss 10 coins, right? And it simulates tossing it once, then gives you the 10 data. So you can see that we've now tossed it 13 times, or I could even add another 50 times and so forth, and we'll do the simulation once, and now we've suddenly got 50 bits of data going. That can be quite interesting in class, because I've had kids start cheering on tails or heads or something like that, and so on. But there's a lot more to investigate, even just in that probability app itself. You can escape and get out of it eventually, and work back and get into the other options. And as I said, we haven't got time to look at it now, but you can do all sorts of cool things in there by getting in beforehand if you're using it as on the emulator with a projector, and actually change the probability so that you can have biased coins or biased dice and see what sort of discussion that brings up in class. So you can play with those, and if you've got access to a calculator, then by all means get in and have a go. I think we're going over time, and John, I think you wanted to come back with a few things just to round up.
Yeah, I think we'll may have to leave it there, Jim, and I'll pass it back over to Rodney.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, John. So just summing up for a wonderful part 1 and part 2 of the series, it's been fantastic. And
as we said yesterday,
series,
Rodney, sorry, as we said yesterday, if there's any questions that people have, they do want to know how to do anything in particular, then please, by all means, I encourage them to email into the TI help, and we will get one of us to reply to them and give them the answer that they need.
Yes, that's most definitely true. There's Texas Instruments Australia help, and then the teachers can help each other. We all help each other and learn from each other. So as you see on my screen, you'll see that I've actually gone to education.ti.com, and if you're not sure, just type in /Australia and you go to that website. And generally you can look for resources here for teachers, the Australian Curriculum Inspired. You've got the Senior Curriculum Inspired resources. There's a lot there. But just summing up regarding the webinar series as what we're participating, if you click into here, we'll actually go and see the next part of the website, and you'll see what's coming up. You'll see at the moment we've actually had part 1 and part 2 is a wonderful series. The next one in the sequence is actually on next Tuesday, February 16th. So we've got about complex numbers, the plan, and these are being updated on a regular basis from week to week or a few days. And if you've missed a webinar and you've been busy with family or school commitments and parent-teacher and so forth, you can click on the On-Demand tab, and you'll see the first webinar of the year was Brian Lennon and Peter Fox. Back to School Resources Ready had the Operating System 4.0 of the TI Inspire. You can actually play the webinar, look at it online, or download it and play it offline, and all the TNS files, the Word documents, PDF solutions, they all do that. So as with this series, part 1 and part 2, there'll be extra resources to share. So in a few days' time, you'll see it listed there on the demand. So just at the end of this webinar, just complete the survey form that will actually come up on your screen. It will provide feedback for Texas Instruments Australia to improve their webinar series. It's a fabulous series hosted by teachers all around Australia, and we'll share and learn from each other. And also check your inbox and your emails, that there will be a follow-up email regarding your link to print your certificate for your professional development. So thank you to Jim.
Thanks,
Rodney.
Rodney.
John.
Thank you, Rodney. Thanks, Jim.
And until next time, everybody, take care, and we'll speak to you another time. Bye for now.